Hey, my name is Ashley, and I live in Northwest Arkansas with my husband and our 10-year-old daughter. And we are getting ready to move into our dream and final house for the last time, hence all of my nicknames from behind the shades here. But anyways, no. So yeah, we live in Northwest Arkansas. I don't really do much. I'm in graduate school to become a therapist and a psychologist. I come from a really bad childhood trauma background. I've got severe PTSD. So I am just here to raise awareness to everybody and just, let people that are struggling know that we're here and we understand you and we hear you, and we're not here to judge, we're here to help. So
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic point that you mentioned that we are here to assist and not judge. Like, even though I judge people in many different ways, I must say, but I don't judge anyone when it comes
well,
to
and those are
this.
legitimate ways. Some people need to be judged in certain ways, and it's not even like a bad judgment. It's like I hate to call it judgment. It's more of a, you need to be made aware of this because not it's I'm gonna be the nice one and tell you the nice way. Other people may not be so nice. So
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't judge, I analyze. How about that? That's
and
the
there you
word of the
go.
day,
And yeah,
right?
there you go. Analyze.
I
I feel like that's
analyze
much.
the good and bad behavior of those that interact with me, and then I move accordingly. That's my word of the year.
There you go.
Analyze.
Yep. And then situational awareness is always very important.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, situational awareness and what's
People
that
forget
one?
about situational awareness. They're like, oh crap, I forgot that was a thing.
I know. And there's something else. Selective outrage. That's the other one from
Selective
2023.
hearing is another one.
There you go. There you go.
Oh,
So with
selective
you,
outrage has been a big one lately. We should talk about that
it
sometime.
has. We should, because I know that what didn't what's his name? Chris Rock named his special, his comedy special that after he got slapped by Will Smith. Selective outrage, I think it was called.
What, I don't know. Did he come out with something after that?
Yeah, yeah.
That
Last year
wouldn't
he did a
surprise me.
comedy special. Yeah, he talked about it for the first time. He must have got paid like billions and billions of dollars, right? Could you imagine?
Well, and the funny part is that him and Jada aren't even married, weren't married at the time. And even she was like embarrassed, like, what is this fool doing?
I know. Could you imagine? Like, I look at like I've dated women and they would give like a dirty look and stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever come across man or woman that's willing to get into a physical confrontation with someone in public and in a very public area like that, right? It's kind of tough.
You'd be surprised, but that's why you are the company that you keep, and you also just know what areas to avoid. I'm not going to name any specific places, but there are a lot of places and a lot of different destination adventures that people like to go on that bad things always end up happening. And I'm like, that's why I fly and get Airbnbs.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So are you implying that you've slapped a couple of people in your time?
No, I haven't, but I've wanted to. And then somebody else did it for me because they got mad at them. And I was just like, cool, God's work is amazing.
Ladies and
Like,
gentlemen, violence is never the answer. Let me clarify that right now.
violence is never the answer, but it's not, if I'm not the one that's doing it, I'm not the one that's going to get in trouble. If someone's going to hold you accountable, let them hold you accountable. I'm just probably going to give you a dirty look and be like, you wrong right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I guess here where I am in Canada, it's a little bit different because most people don't have a gun. Where in the States, most people do. So the
Yeah.
consequences are a little bit different, I would say.
We'll touch on that topic another time. But yeah, no, the open carry laws around here, especially in the South and Midwest, are insane. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No, no, we're here to talk about something that's a little bit more on the radar of parents, not necessarily. It's interesting. Like we're here to talk about, I guess, raising a child in a world where people are negotiating how they feel and the different pronouns and different genders. And what's interesting is I still strongly believe this impacts probably a smaller group of people, but because this the group of people, the demographic, they're so loud and they're very aware of what they want people to know. I think that's why it's beginning to impact a lot more people. I know for you, you have a very young daughter who's growing up in a world that is being shaped like this. So what's some of the conversations that like you and your husband have with her and her place in the world, I guess?
Yeah, so well, I mean, that's kind of something that we are still trying to navigate because one thing that we don't want is we do not want other people or a school system pushing a narrative on them. We have my husband and I, like, we don't know everything. We're not the Messiah. We're not God. We're not all is better. We're not almighty. Like, we get that. But we also know research. And like I said, me being an under or a graduate student trying to get my, my bachelor's in psychology and, counseling and stuff like that, that is something that really needs to be talked about at a home level. And there are so many people that are very progressive people, and I love it, I appreciate it, but like, we need to be progressive in, other matters. And that they it's like the people that are, in my husband and I's opinion, and the people that are preaching that we're the wrong people or we're the bad people for allowing our kids to still go to school, and around the same people who are willing to teach them said quote unquote pronouns, whatever, they're the ones that are just like calling us the whatever names they like to call us. And just because we don't agree with it being taught in a public setting like that, like, my husband and I, we are just very much not against it. We're very much pro our daughter having an open mind and learning what the life and the world is about, learning about things that are going to come across her that she may not understand. But my husband and I will give her all of the facts. I don't want a state curriculum to give her what they consider facts, because let's be honest, we live in the South, in the heart of the Bible Belt. You already know where that's going to go. So we want our daughter to have the accurate information before making choices. But at the same time, a lot of us really think that there is an age and a time and a place for that. And 9.5, 10 year olds, that's not it.
Yeah, that is
Like,
quite young when you think about it.
yeah. And they're really starting to push that on. Like, when I was my daughter's age and going into fifth grade, that's when they start teaching you about your body changes, not pronouns.
I wonder, and I was thinking about this because I was watching an interview today, and there's giving some stats that there's about like at least here in Canada, there's like 70 to 80% of the people, they want to know what's being taught in the school, like the parents, they want to know what's being taught in the schools. They want to have maybe the option of understanding why this is being taught, and if they don't think it's appropriate for their child or if it's too controversial, they have the option to opt out. And I wonder if this would be something that's easier if they were just say, hey, this is the curriculum from September to June, and the parents get to review it and understand what is being taught, and maybe they can make a decision versus a lot of parents are being caught off guard by what's being taught.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a good topic you brought up, because unfortunately here in the United States, it's very state dependent, and any state can do whatever they want, and the school education system is up to the governor of that state. So we're very 50-50 divided on that. And it's like they don't sit down and tell us what our kids are learning for the year. They'll send out a weekly thing, but at least where we live, at least our experience with our daughter, and it's like, I mean, basically the only way to shield them from that is by putting them in private school. And we did the private school route. It was not the best thing for us. And to me, I feel like that's something that needs to be talked about at a home level, because kids already have this expectation of, I have to go to school because I have to. So then if you're sitting there talking to them about information like that, then they automatically think, oh, well, I'm at school because I have to learn this. So that means I have to learn that. And that is, I think, where the divide comes. But that's where I get into the hypocritical people, because it's like those same people that are screaming equality are the same ones that are like, oh, we can't be doing this in the classroom, or vice versa. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's like I feel like you can't win here in the United States. No matter what we do, we can't win. And if you're in the Bible Belt, pardon my French, but you're screwed. Sorry. You're screwed 9 ways to Sunday. If you live in the Bible Belt, especially the heart of it, you are. Mm. And that's just kind of where it's lying. And a lot of us parents have correlated and come together and just been like, hey, we're going to teach our kids. And we don't really have a say on what this our school systems, at least in the state that I live in, we don't really have a say on what they learn. The only thing we can do is just know what's going on in the world and be aware of it and just have those conversations with your children beforehand, because if they can form an opinion on it before someone tries to shove it down their throat, and in my opinion, I feel like that's better off. I am a pro-choice person, and I am pro-thinking, pro-do whatever you need to do, whatever you feel is right. But I just feel I feel like if you don't talk to your children beforehand about the things that are so different in the world nowadays, you're gonna come to weird forces of people that are cramming it down your throat and making you think that it's right. And then, what are you gonna do with those people who go their whole life thinking that it's right and then they realize it's wrong?
Like it does seem,
That's where resentment and hate starts coming in.
yeah, like it does seem like from the outside looking in from what Americans are going through, that every, let's say, year to 2 years, there's something that's brought up to divide the country, right? Like now you have,
That's their agenda.
yeah, like now you have the pronouns, and before that you had like BML, and then you had White Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, then
BLM,
yeah, then
BLM.
before, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like you had BLM, and then to counter it, you had Blue Lives Matter. Then to counter that, you had white all lives matter. And then you had
No,
that
we always
before
have
that.
something to counter something, and it's
Hmm.
nonsense. It's like, can we not just go back to living in a world where people learned about things at age appropriate times in their life? Like, why
Well,
do I have to worry about sending my 10-year-old daughter to school and her coming home asking me questions about something that a 10-year-old should not know about at that age?
I think if it's going to be something that is a part of sex ed, I can understand its place.
Yes, but
Right?
this is they're taking it's almost
Yeah.
like they're taking sexual education out of classes, which is why we have so many teen pregnancies in the United States, and replacing it with, but like I said, every state is different. Like, my state is not really pushing that direction, but I know people that have kids in other states and they're just like, I'm not against it. You are what you are. It is what it is. But like, can I not teach my own kids at my own level and my own pace?
So what would be if it's state, because that's similar to here, right? Like province to province, city to city, there are differences. So what would be the alternative at that point if your only option is to say, okay, either I'm okay with this, which it seems like most people are okay with it as long as they're aware. But if you're not going to be aware and you can't afford private school, what's the alternative then?
That I don't know, because I mean, I we can afford private school. We're just not going to go that route again. Our daughter just thrives much better in public school. She loves it. She's a competitive cheerleader, so it works out better. But I mean, I guess the only thing I can say to do, and I hate to say it now, because before, like in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, they told you everything. But nowadays they don't. It's just like your kids come home and they start asking questions, and I feel like parents just really need to be super involved. Like, I am very involved in my daughter's education, very involved. So is my husband. We know what's going on at all times with our education, and that's because we take the initiative to know what is going on. I mean, we can get on this another day and talk about kids with disabilities, but our daughter does have ADHD and sensory issues. She is on a 504 and an IEP. It's not like super severe. Medication helps it. She's doing really great. But it's like things like that. Had if she didn't have that stuff, we wouldn't even know what was going on half the time. And a lot of the times, I only know that because I stay in contact with the teachers. And, it's like if they come to me and say, hey, this is something we're going to be talking about, I'm going to say, well, okay, forgive me, but we've already talked to her about these things. Do you mind if I keep her out of school that day? And a lot of times, they'll be like, yeah, it's fine. Where we're moving from, they're so strict because we live in the boonies. And that's part of the reason why we sold this house. But they're very, very like, no, curriculum only. But where we're moving is bigger and they're much more open. And so we don't really have to worry about all of that. But it's annoying that like they don't even give you the option anymore. Like when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, your parents had to sign a waiver for you to be able to go through. You talk about things like that, and they're literally like just bringing in people to just talk about these things and not even telling the parents. And I'm like, okay, so where did the consent portion of all of this go? Like, at what point in our life in the last 40 years has consent just gone down the drain when it comes to children and parents? Like,
I
sorry,
think that
I'm like really, I feel like I'm really getting on my high horse. I'm
no, no,
sorry.
that's perfectly fine. No, because it's true. There's a lot of parents out there that feel the same way because they're comparing it to when they were growing up and they remember all the forms they have to bring to their parents. I remember going through that. Mom, can you sign this? Dad, can you sign this? And like,
Right.
didn't I just sign something 2 weeks ago? Yes, that was for this. This is for this now.
Yeah. And
And it
now it's
seems
like
like
they just,
there's like yeah, it seems like there's a consent. Sorry, there seems to be there's this understanding that as soon as you enroll your child on day one, that they consent to everything that happens in the classroom, right?
it's
It
funny
seems that
that you
way.
say that because I think what happened, and it's because my husband and I were talking about this the other day, and it's something that we're like, why the hell are we just now realizing this? You know how like when it comes to like enrolling your kids in school, or you go to the doctor that you've been to for so many years and they have to update paperwork and you're just like, whatever, it's the same shit and you just sign it. I think that's what this is now. There's probably something in that paperwork, and us as parents that grew up when things weren't like that, we're just like, yeah, yeah, da, da, da. And then now I'm afraid they're going to be like, oh, well, here, you sign this. And it's like, well, you know what? I changed my mind. Okay. I'm going to be honest. I didn't read what I was signing. That's my fault, but it's not a contractual thing. I'm still allowed to say no if, and you take me to court. Take me to court. If my daughter becomes truant because I don't like what you're teaching her, take me to court. Believe me, I will stand right in front of a judge and I promise you, he will literally say, okay.
Oh yeah,
So,
like a day or two, I don't think is going to impact. Like for here, we had I forget the name of the school here in Canada, but there was a number of parents that they were pulling their kids from from a celebration and they didn't want it. So the worst that happened to them, from what I remember from the article and the interviews with some of the parents, was that people viewed them in a different way, but there wasn't any educational penalty to them pulling their child or their children from the day when
right.
of those celebrations that they didn't agree with. One thing I want to add that you mentioned is that I think parents, it seems that even though they want to know, I don't think, I think they're being put in a position to not have conversations that they're want to have at that point in time. I think they planned it a little later on in the child's life instead of at 8, at 10.
Right. And another thing that you got to think about too is there are a lot of younger parents now than there used to be when we were growing up, and a lot of them are scared to say anything. A lot of them are just completely naive to what's going on around them, and that's when we start running into the hypocritical issues. That's when it starts becoming a problem. And then that's when we start getting into, well, you're what's wrong with the world today. Da, 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 da. Like that's where all the hatred starts coming in. It's like, God forbid anybody posts something about something in a mom group. If it has to do with a topic like that, all the perfect moms are going to come out of the woodwork and just start being like, oh, no, 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 no. You don't ever let them teach your kids that. And it's like, you don't have to be that about it. You know what I mean? Like, we can talk about this. This is gonna be okay. Like, talk to your children, educate your children. So that way when your children walk into the classroom and they hear these things, you can be like, no, that's BS. I know that's BS because my parents talked to me about it. They showed me articles. I read things about it. They gave me the information at my disposal. Like, rather than just an agenda being shoved down their throat.
Yeah, I think
And
sometimes people forget that understanding, acceptance, and engaging are three different things. Like, I
yeah,
can understand why someone is living their life a certain way, but I may not want to be around it. And that's perfectly fine. And I
yeah,
think people blur the lines and they forget that because a lot of people think that, well, if you don't participate in my lifestyle, that means you're against it. Not necessarily so.
yeah, no, exactly. And that's a great thing that you brought that up because I really think that like I think understanding is a huge thing because if people just understood more, then, if people would just take the time to actually sit down and try to understand, we would probably have less issues in the world between peers and between people because people just go off nowadays, especially, Alpha and these Gen X or not these Gen Z kids and all that, it's like they don't even, nobody ever taught them to sit down, shut the up and actually listen, like take some damn wisdom in. You know what I mean? They're just like, oh, whatever. I'm gonna live life how I want to live it. And it's like that's not how we have a what's the word I'm looking for? Successful society per se. Like I don't know. Like it's just you've got it's just such a mixture now. I don't even know how to put any of this into words because everything is just such a mixture now that it's like you don't know. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a double-edged sword every time you turn around. And I don't even know what the right thing to say or do is anymore. I mean, I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and then there's somebody in my ear saying, "Oh no, you're not," and it's just like, and then it makes me question it altogether. But I think it's important to just stay true to your roots, stay true to your beliefs, you know, stand your ground, always stand your ground with the school systems because at the end of the day, your child and your child's education is what is the most important thing. Like, and I don't feel like that falls into education. I feel like that is something that should be elaborated more on at home, and that ninth grade, yeah, cool. Go ahead, talk about it. But we do not need to be teaching kids this when they're in second grade. And that's happening over here. And there are some areas and some schools that aren't even letting the parents have a choice. And to me, that's where I feel like our constitutional rights as Americans have been thrown out the window because you now have taken away our freedom of speech, expression, and now you're taking away our ability to be parents. That's not right.
Yeah, like freedom of speech and being able to communicate like adults, you're always going to potentially be in a position where you're going to offend someone. So I'll give you an example. So if I were to meet someone for the first time and I say hello to them, and if I don't use the proper pronoun, that doesn't mean that I am trying to be offensive in a way. I'm just addressing them based on the appearance that they're given. Now, if I'm mistaken and they correct me, they say, "Hey, you know what, Terrain? My pronouns aren't actually he, him. It's she, her. Perfect. You've corrected me, and that's fine. And then we can go forward." What I think sometimes happens is that people will respond in a hostile way because of their past experiences when they're explaining it. People may be not understood and they get defensive. Now when a new person comes, they're taking out that past trauma, that past rage on this other person who is, for lack of a better word, innocent and who wasn't a part of their past. Like what I try to practice is I use people's names, right? So when
Right.
I use people's names, so that seems to be the safe bet. And when I use the words, let's say sir or madam or things like that, it doesn't come from a malicious or offensive position. But I
That's
think
how we were
sometimes,
raised.
yeah, but I think sometimes people may take it and be like, okay, well, five people before you mistreated me based on my pronouns. Now you look like you're number six. I'm like, well, that, like anything else, that's not a me problem. That's a
That
you
doesn't
problem,
define
right?
you. That doesn't define you. Yeah, like no, I totally get that. I totally get that. And I mean, it just makes me sad that, I never thought when I was younger that this was the world we'd be living in and that I would have to have these conversations with my kid or that I would have to worry about things like this. But It's 2024. I'm all for progression. I want progression to be in a positive way and on a positive note. And it just sometimes feels like it's not going that route. And it like I said, it's a double-edged sword. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like I can't win. And that's part of the reason why I'm just very selective as who my husband and I, like even my husband, like who we keep ourselves around and stuff, because it's just like some of the stupid, and again, pardon my language, some of the stupid shit that we hear just in public. It's just like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to the nearest corner of a brick wall and because I can't stand it.
So what do you think it is going to go from here? Because you're raising a child, and then the next, and then that generation, this is going to be, for lack of a better word, their reality because they're growing up into it, where us, we're maybe just raising children in it. So where do you think it's going to go, and how would you guide new parents who are entering this situation like you're going through right now?
So the best advice I can give to new parents is always go by your gut instinct. Do not keep up with society and what they say. Do not ever allow a school system to dictate what your children learn and what they know. You as a parent know what is appropriate for your family and for your children. You have to make that judgment call. As far as moving forward, I don't know that there's much more we can do as far as moving forward, except for if she has questions, just keep being very transparent, very honest. That's another thing. Transparency and honesty are the two main factors and keys when it comes to having an open relationship with your children, especially in the times that we're living in, because if you're not, they're going to have more questions than answers and they're going to go try to find them themselves. So sometimes you're going to have those really, really difficult conversations that you don't want to have with your children. But believe me, when I tell you, I have cried myself to sleep many a nights over the last couple of years just because I never thought I'd have to talk to my daughter about some things at this age. But when I wake up the next morning and I talk to my husband, I feel so much better because I'm like, at least she knows. At least she won't be completely blindsided, if that makes sense. So I don't know where to go from here because I don't know that there's really a way for me to go. I live in the middle of the Bible Belt. It's not a huge thing where I live, at least it's not yet. But I do have a lot of friends who are going through it all over the country. I don't know that there's a way that we can do it other than just make sure we're staying on top of the school system, staying on top of our children. Make sure that you are an open line of communication for your kids always, because as someone who's in therapy twice a week and suffers from severe childhood trauma and PTSD, like I literally have been working the last 10 years to be a better mother and a better parent. And I have more open lines of communication with my daughter than I ever had with my mother. And she can come to me for anything. And that is so important because you don't want your kids to find these things out on their own. Because believe it or not, there are a lot more risks if they have to find the information themselves. And sometimes it could be bodily harm. And I hate to say that, but I have heard stories. So transparency and honesty is so important. And don't listen to the school system. Listen to your gut, listen to your spouse. If you're not in a relationship with the father or mother of your child, make sure you guys are co-parenting to the best of your ability and y'all are on the same page when it comes to sensitive topics like this. And not even just in the South, all over the United States, wherever you are, Alaska, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. If you're not connected to the actual United States, it doesn't matter. Like, make sure that you have that openness. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm stressing it too much, but I don't know that you can stress it enough.
And I want to add that during this time, right, we have to remember that children are very impressionable, they're very malleable. And there's a lot of kids who, because of these types of situations, they're confused. And if the parents aren't as equipped as maybe they need to be, or at the very least, if the parents were expecting this type of conversation later on, the children can be left in a very difficult situation of not
Right.
knowing how to maneuver in the world, not understanding what's going on. And if you put adult issues and situations onto children, It leads
Yep.
to a lot of children having very dark thoughts. Some will self delete, some will
Yep.
fall into depression, some may lead a very, very anxious life. So we have to be
Mhm.
very, very safe and understanding of these children. And the one of the best recommendations I can give for anyone out there who's listening is be as observant and a part of your parents' life, sorry, your children's life as you can be. Don't leave it up to anyone else. If your gut feeling is something is wrong, have that conversation because everyone who has become a parent, you have entered into agreement that you're going to be the primary protector of that child. So don't
Right.
leave them out to the world.
Can I add to that really quickly? That's actually interesting that you say that because this is such a controversial topic, and we can talk about this another time. And it actually is a great topic. But I was watching a video of a doctor, and she's like, four things that I don't let my kids do just because of things that I've seen. And two of the big things, like one of them was sleepovers for obvious reasons. We can talk about that. But then the fourth one, and she was like, this is the most controversial one, is like, I am going to go through my kids' stuff. Like, I'm not going to completely like go through their room or anything, but I am going to have your phone. I am going to see the type of people that you're around, the conversations you're having, because if I don't, then that means I failed as a parent. Me being a part of your privacy at this age is important up until you are old enough, because you don't have those cognitive receptors to make those right decisions until you're about 15, 16 years old. So until you're mature enough and you're able, those binders recept in your brain to where you can make those cognitive decisions, I am going to be a part of your life. And you can call me a helicopter parent all you want, but it is what it is. If I'm in my daughter's life and I know who she's talking to, the types of conversations that she has, I can nip that in the bud before it even starts. And, say what you want. Everyone can say, oh, your daughter's going to rebel. No, believe it or not, I've had to do it to two of her little friends, and she's 10. And she saw it and she was like, well, it makes sense now why they did that. She's like, I'm sorry I didn't see it before. And my daughter should not have to apologize to me for her not seeing toxicity in her friends that stemmed from their parents.